And I'm in Ontario, for the record.
Yeah, my brother is still a practicing attorney in Toronto, and he stayed in the armpit of Canada, and I have gone to the end
now
of the
hiding
rainbow.
in the bunker.
It's beautiful. I walk in the morning. It's so hot. It's already back to being too hot now in December, and then I'm like thinking we're going to be up in Commie Canada in a week, and it's going to be back to the miserable 4 hours of sunlight a day.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to what you're coming back to. See what form of government we have at that point.
Okay, so we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, and just the most obvious of the day. Were you glued to CPAC yesterday?
I wasn't. I had it going on in the background. I thought there was going to be an announcement at 2 p.m., but no, I was on CBC. I prefer state-funded media.
Oh no, CPAC is still state-funded, I think.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I don't know. It's a conservative political. I don't actually know. Hold on. But let me bring this up. Well, okay, the context for anybody who doesn't know what's going on in Canada. Trudeau has been wildly unpopular for a very, very long time. He started, when I say literally buying votes, or at least trying to, it's so literal and so transparently in your face. He recently announced, Dan, in Quebec, for those Americans watching, we have GST. In Quebec, we have QST, Quebec sales tax. In the rest of Canada, is it called the HST, the harmonized sales tax? And that means both provincial and federal tax on goods and services that you purchase.
Right.
Okay. And depending on the province, it's more or less. I think in Quebec, I think it's 9.5%, and the federal sales tax is 6.5%. Does that make sense? No, 5.5. Well, it gets to about 15% in Quebec between this provincial and so that is to say, everybody, understand this. You make your money. If you make $100,000 a year, you're netting, say, 55,000, maybe 58,000. Everything you buy after having paid your 40-some-odd% income tax, you're paying 15% tax on everything you buy, pretty much. You pay property tax, you pay license fees for your passport license. You're lucky if you're left with 30 cents on your dollar if for every dollar you make. And so Justin Trudeau recently announced that they would, for 2 months starting January, suspend the sales tax on groceries and foods.
Oh gosh, yeah, certain groceries, certain food, and certain toys. The list was like a whole. I couldn't even.
But the irony, it's 9.975%. It's.
Well, Americans have sales tax too, don't they?
In Florida, I think it's like, I want to say 5%, maybe 4.5%. Like we got on a $20 breakfast, it was like it's $2, so maybe it's less.
Interesting.
And there's no state income tax in Florida. Did you know that, Daniel?
No, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, but then you realize what you're paying the feds, and you realize what the feds are laundering over to Ukraine, and I can really pretty much put a dollar figure on what I've been compelled to finance by way of Ukraine wars. But when in terms of the tax on, or the suspension of the tax on foods, there was already no GST and QST on food items, correct?
The various items already did not have HST or GST on them, so I'm not exactly sure which items. The whole point is it's a total and utter distraction. You listen. There's a guy on Twitter who does he's like part of an association for the restaurant and food business, or the retail. I forget. Anyhow, the point is this tax is such an administrative pain in the butt for retailers to reprogram their cash machines and have to resubmit their, like, it's great for the accountants and lawyers or whatever, but like for the mom and pop shops that are trying to operate like this more administrative nonsense, it's almost like it's a total distraction intended to clutter our thinking, because it's crazy.
In Florida it's 6%, but no, and apparently this is going to get into allegedly what might have been the at the root of Chrystia Freeland resigning. Apparently it was going to cost the budget, or it was going to cost the government like $1.6 billion, and they were already going to be have you been following the budget issue? Like they were going to be 40 billion in deficit.
92 or something.
Yeah, they were so okay. I'm presuming everybody knows what's going on in Canada. Justin Trudeau's been wildly unpopular, the most unpopular prime minister I think ever. He's at like 20-some-odd% approval rating, down from 60 when he first got elected in 2015. There's been talk for him to resign, step down, allow a new leader to come up. People were hypothesizing that it might be Chrystia Freeland. So he's been wildly unpopular. They need to call an election in 2025 legislatively, unless there's an act of war, or what's the other one? Insurrection or martial law. They have to hold elections in 2025, not to jinx anything. And so there's been a massive turmoil in terms of calls for him to step down, etc. In order to buy the vote, in order to sway low information, smooth brain voters, he's going to put a pause on GST and QST or HST on items that by and large didn't have it. So they can only harp on diapers for some reason. And there was a second attempt to buy the votes. Oh, yes. Every family making under $150,000 a year is going to get a check for $250. Did you hear that, Dan?
I heard.
Are you going to get the check? Can you imagine? You make $150,000. Let's just say you make $148,000. You're paying about $65,000. It might even more because it's a sliding scale in terms of the taxes you pay. You're paying $65,000 in taxes. They give you $250 effing dollars, which might cover a parking ticket in Toronto. Sorry, so that's him trying to buy the
Better
votes.
than a hole in the head, I guess. And by the way, the provinces did that too. A couple of provinces jumped on with that.
Yeah, Quebec, I think did it the last time they.
They're just shuffling it. Even the carbon tax is the worst because it's like not even doing what it's supposed to do, which is like invested in clean tech. Really, they're just using the money to like put it into 8 of 10 Canadian.
Well, explain the carbon tax for those who don't know, because Pierre Poilievre is campaigning off Axe the carbon tax. What is the carbon tax?
Carbon tax is a tax on the total carbon footprint of emissions of various products and things. So you're going to pay a lot of carbon tax on your natural gas bill and I guess on gasoline too. And yeah, I guess the idea is to reduce consumption of those items, right? Save the planet. And the joke is always like, there's no clear cause and effect between the tax and what it's intended to do. Maybe if the money is used to invest in more clean tech, but there's no accountability for the money. So it's almost like it almost seems like it's a slush fund that's being totally abused.
At best, that's what it is. You know what percentage of global emissions Canada contributes to?
It was like under 3% or something.
It's under 2%. I think it was 1.25% global emissions from Canada. I think it was 1.25%. 1.5% of total global CO2 emissions, and the mother effer is crippling Canada and Canadians. But he's giving a tax back to the carbon tax. So he's an idiot, and he's burning the country to the ground. They need to hold elections in 2025, but they're pushing it off through this unholy alliance, which in theory no longer exists, except the NDP hasn't called a new election because Jagmeet Singh needs his pension, and I think he has to get it like I think it's July 2025. He's eligible for his pension, so they can call elections after. And so what happened yesterday is Chrystia Freeland is supposed to table the budget, and it's going to exceed their deficit it exceeds it by 50%, but by 20 some odd billion. And so she resigns 2 hours before they're supposed to table the budget, which is going to show that the projected budget is going to, throw Canada into an even wilder deficit. She resigns. There's a little bit of some of the details after this I'm not totally up to speed with, but someone else who was supposed to replace her for that position legally didn't want to, so they were going to go to one of the Randys. Did you watch any of the debate, Dan?
No.
Did you hear that they were calling them the Randys?
Yeah, I don't know.
And then Ferguson, the Speaker of the House, comes out and says, rule of protocol is you don't call other parliamentarians by their first name. It's like, fuck you. I swear I would get my ass kicked out of there so fast. I can't call you by your first. I'm sorry, Your Highness. This is Parliament.
Parliamentary etiquette.
And so she resigns. Someone else doesn't take her place. And then there's a whole debate as to whether or not they just call elections now. Conservatives are pushing, but not too hard. NDP is pushing, but certainly fighting. And that's where it seems to have stopped.
The leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, future prime minister, most likely, he went through the list, like it was like 4. Apparently nobody wanted this job because I guess people don't want to get thrown under the bus.
Because it's going to be a position where they're going to get destroyed in terms of defending this budget, which makes absolutely no sense, which will plunge Canada into Venezuela-type crippled economy.
Right. It's going to be painful. But I think the general numbers, I thought they did, 63 billion. But in terms of who's getting what and how that plays out, yeah, don't know the details.
Let me see if in our local community, if anybody has that link. This isn't O'Toole's Conservative Party, though, says Stephen Britton. No, it's Pierre Poilievre, and he's sort of like O'Toole. He's a little bit more conservative than O'Toole, but,
There's another video I'm looking for where Chrystia Freeland can't pronounce the budget, like she messes up. Did you remember that one? It was from a while ago.
No. I'll bring up the good one, the one that I know that is good from yesterday, which is I was watching this, and it's like watching the stereotype of a Latin American soap opera at 3 a.m. It's so cheap, corny, lame politics. Is this it? Here, listen to this. This one I know because I clipped it yesterday. Listen to this.
Mr. Speaker, just to underline the chaos we're faced with here, the finance minister resigned the day she was to present the fall budget, which was going to contain a massive deficit overrun. The job then went automatically to the industry minister, who immediately resigned, like on the spot, which then went down the line. And the next person in order was the famous 2 Randys. and they're not available to do the job either. We're now less than 2 hours away from the fall economic update. Why won't the Prime Minister have the courage to come in here, present it himself, and put it for a confidence vote tonight?
A bunch of buffoons.
No, I didn't think of that. That's cool.
Think of what?
Putting pressure on the Prime Minister to present himself and then put a confidence vote right on the spot. I like that. Sorry, I happen to have a thing for PP.
Wait, what did you just say?
I have a thing for Pierre Poilievre.
I have a thing for PP. Clip it, people running. My brother's at the Golden Showers. So what's happened today? Has there been there's been no development? They're not proroguing Parliament that we know of?
I haven't heard of that. But that'd be kind of cool if they did prorogue, because apparently all the bills die on the spot.
Yeah.
And there's a couple out there that are pissing off a lot of people, especially Bill 63, C63 there. With,
well, you have to. So I'll explain this to everybody as well. They're breaking for Christmas regardless. And now it's a recess for holidays. A recess doesn't start the parliamentary session from scratch. This is all new to me. I learned this when they had Brexit and they were proroguing Parliament in the context of that political turmoil. And I was like, what's proroguing Parliament? And I make a video about it. And then the comments are like, Viva, you idiot. You live in a parliamentary system. You don't know what proroguing Parliament is. So you can have a recess, which doesn't end the parliamentary session. It's a ministerial decision. Prorogue Parliament, which means end the current parliamentary session. And then you take a bigger break, you reassess, you regroup, and then you call a new session. And everything starts from scratch. All of the bills that were left on the table are dead. This is how Bill I think it was Bill C10 at the time, initially died on the vine. Then they start a new parliamentary session. They got to bring back the legislation, bring back the debates, and revive everything. So the discussion yesterday was whether or not they were going to either trigger a non-confidence vote and hold new elections earlier, which would screw Jugmeat and whoever else is looking for their pension, or prorogue Parliament. They have a longer break over Christmas and come back and start from scratch. What bills are currently, because there were a number. The Online Streaming Act passed. Which ones are currently pending that are meaningful?
The biggest one, I think, the biggest one that they're trying to sell is the Online Harms Act, which his Minister of Justice has been, doing a roadshow on for the past 4 or 5 months, heavy promoting this bill, which is the bill that basically sets up an appointed committee to kind of monitor online comments that can be considered hateful or whatever other,
This is the one I talked about this a lot. This is the one that added life imprisonment as a potential punishment for denying or advocating genocide.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the overview, but I just make sure it's the Bill C63, known as the Online Harms Act. And I said there's nothing in this bill that actually creates a law that doesn't already exist. Proposed Canadian law aiming to regulate online platforms by requiring them to actively remove harmful content like hate speech. Well, they already have that. Child exploitation, non-consensual. Well, non-consensual intimate images. They mean revenge porn. That's going to be abused thoroughly. Essentially holding social media companies accountable for content shared on their platforms. It also establishes the Digital Safety Commission to enforce those regulations and support victims of online harm. So
the setting up of that commission is the biggest flag for those of us who have concerns about executive control of judicial features. Right?
Someone's drinking coffee. Who is it?
Yeah, that's what that is.
That's the Nespresso machine.
I'm gonna put that on mute. But yes.
Oh, don't with that. And by the way, it is the one that I remember talking about this at the time. The Online Harm Act states that any person who advocates for or promotes genocide, they need to put genocide in quotes as well, is, quote, liable to imprisonment for life. It defines lesser hate crimes as including online speech that is likely to foment detestation or vilification. This is, for those who are not aware, the term used in the Supreme Court to determine hate speech. That was the Supreme Court of of Canada. When they defined what is hate speech, they said this is their definition. So they've decided to codify it instead of override it on the basis of race, religion, gender, or other protected categories. It's communism.
Yeah, so that was the risk. In theory, the commission could rule that anyone who had misgendered someone in their historical feeds or any on social media could be considered some type of form of hate, and that account could be suspended. Like it's a disaster. So prorogue, if all these bills get killed on the floor, so to speak, there would be a silver lining to that. Interesting, by the way, is that Harper prorogued Parliament twice. I don't know if you. So the previous Prime Minister, Conservative, did the same trick when he was kind of getting pressured. And the second time is interesting. I was reading up on this, how the Governor General kind of didn't exactly comply with the request. She kind of dragged her feet on indulging in the prorogation at that time. So that was interesting. But
I'm trying to find the portion of on Bill C63, which also said that if you have access to delete what would otherwise be a contravening tweet and you or
Right.
post and you don't, and someone else reposts it after the implementation of the act, that would be considered republishing for the purposes of the act. And it was Jordan, not to steal the credit, because it was Jordan Peterson and or Ezra Levant from Rebel News who highlighted that portion of the law. And it's I'll see if I can find it. It's actually the case. Like if you have access and delete it and you don't, and it gets republished, you're back in violation of the law. It's like not just thought crime, retroactive thought crime.
Yep. And you see it now, by the way, the way these tribunals are set up, and they can be politicized very readily. So this happened in a small town, Ontario, where the mayor apparently had a bank account garnished for $5,000.
Yep, for not celebrating Pride Month.
For not celebrating. No, I think it was specifically because he made a comment comparing the pride flag to those who are cis, or what do you call it? And the point was, it was a comment he made on the record that they didn't like, that got him dinged. But you can see now, I mean, it could very well get overturned on appeal to the Superior Court or the Court of Appeal. But that whole process, he's now just mired in these legal costs. This is lawfare in action.
Ontario mayor reportedly has bank account garnished after fined for refusing to celebrate Pride Month. Borderland Pride mocked the mayor on social media after reportedly garnishing his bank account. A mayor of a township of Ontario, Canada. Where is it? I mean, I know where it is, but so he had his bank account garnished reportedly after he refused to pay $5,000 fine after a tribunal ruled he had discriminated against an LGBT. So this is this is one of the human rights tribunals. These are the what's what I'm looking for? The Soviet style tribunals, expertise tribunals, just commie tribunals, specialty tribunals that the courts have to show deference to because they are specialty tribunals. Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario ruled that the township of Emo, okay, that's hilarious, and its mayor Harold McQuaker had discriminated against an LGBTQ group under the Ontario Human Rights Code by denying its request to proclaim June as Pride Month. Borderland Pride had requested Emo. It's funny, there's a town in Ontario called Emo and another one called Swastika. No joke. They make the Pride Month declaration and requested the township to fly the 2S LGBTQ plus flag, yada, yada, yada. McQuaker further found to have violated the Human Rights Code by making a, quote, discriminatory remark, end quote, during the town's council.
Read his remark that would they consider
about the flag request, saying that there were no flag for the, quote, other side of the coin for straight people. Holy, like I was on Charlie Kirk then right before we started, and he asked me a question which might get me into trouble with Canadians. Like, do I plan on moving back? Who the hell in their, if you're not born in Canada, and would you move to a place like that? And if the answer is going to be no, if you were born in Canada, do you stay there if you have the option?
It's the same thing. Like, I saw some of the city council meetings, even the states, like what they're doing they banned a flag, the American flag, in one of the council meetings. I think it was in New Jersey.
Yeah, I have it. Oh, no, that's right. It was outside a fire station because I think they deemed it to be something of a political statement, and they said, right, we don't. It's crazy.
So I don't know that you can readily get around it. It's, the federal level determines a bit of it, and then it goes to the provincial, but it's hard to figure out exactly who's steering the ship of some of these smaller agencies, tribunals, whatever, committees.